Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored and so wicked happy that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please tell your family and friends all about the podcast. And if you can, please subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Goodpods, Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Chloe Goodhart. She is here to celebrate birding for babies. Before we invite Chloe into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Michelle Travis's My Mom Has Two Jobs. What a great book this is. Children start ingraining gender role stereotypes at a very young age, and those societal expectations limit our kids' aspirations. Michelle Travis's picture book, My Mom Has Two Jobs, gives teachers and parents a powerful tool to fight back by inspiring girls to imagine themselves as doctors, engineers, police officers, lawyers, dentists, firefighters, teachers, military sergeants, veterinarians, pilots, and so much more. At the same time, My Mom Has Two Jobs celebrates the working moms who support their kids and improve our world every single day. My Mom Has Two Jobs is beautifully illustrated to embrace diverse moms and kids and to show the wide range of important roles women play. Get your copy today. My Mom Has Two Jobs by Michelle Travis. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Princess Pumpkin, the Pocket Alpaca by Michael James and Amber Speiler. Princess Pumpkin, the Pocket Alpaca is an inspired and whimsical children's story for kids aged 4 to 7. It contains 29 full-color illustrations that tell the story of a small, rejected, impish, and real-life alpaca born way too small to survive at only 5.5 pounds. She's adopted by humans and raised as a princess when she overcomes illness and rejection for being different. She seeks out friendships and learns that just being herself, independent and brave, is the key to acceptance. Michael James and Amber Spiller authored the book to share the real-life story of a little 5-pound alpaca. The book touches on the topic of bullying, acceptance, and the value of a loving, non-traditional family unit. And it is brought to life by the artwork of Christine Yamas. Get your copy today. Princess Pumpkin, the Pocket Alpaca. Join us right now from New York City. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut board books. They're called, it's part of the Birding for Babies series, Migrating Birds and Backyard Birds. Please welcome to the show, Chloe Goodhart. Hey, Chloe, how are you?
Hi, Jed. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on. I've been really looking forward to talking to you about these books because I've mentioned here in the podcast my property here in the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, which is in a little tiny corner of Boston. My property is bordered by a bird sanctuary, not near a bird sanctuary. Literally, there's my fence and then bird sanctuary, and it's awesome. And we have all sorts of birds, big and small and cute, and some of them are terrifying. But they all exist, and, birds don't, pay attention to fences the same way we do. So they actually think that our backyard is part of the bird sanctuary. And so birds have always fascinated me.
Yes, they're so neat. I actually live really close to a big cemetery in Brooklyn called Greenwood that, while it's not a bird sanctuary, it's a very popular place for birds because it's so big and green and there's big ponds for migrating birds to stop at. And they actually have these monk parakeets that they think migrated, came over on shipping containers and just stayed. So they're not native to New York, but they've made New York their home. And I live close enough now that the monk parakeets stop over in my backyard, and they're these beautiful bright green birds, and it's always so fun to see them.
Wow, what a treat! What a treat! I've seen parrots and parakeets when we've explored Central America, and isn't it just so cool to see this creature who's green or green and blue and yellow and just all that color?
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Yeah,
Birds are so much fun. They're so colorful. It's great to see them.
And I'm always amazed, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, but birds, they're tiny. Their heads are really tiny, and so their brains are really tiny. But still, they're able to navigate from Boston and New York down to South America and Central America. And when they build their nest, we had a robin nest in one of our bushes a few years back, and it was identical to the robin nest that you see in all the STEM and STEAM books that we featured here on the show. And I'm like, where you go to, like Bird Home Depot to get the architectural plans for the birds to build that?
Yeah, it's really incredible. Like, their instincts are just amazing. And it's such a great birds are such a great entryway to science because, yeah, they are everywhere and they do look just like the birds you see in your books.
Yeah. So tell us, why don't we start with migrating birds? Because one of the things that was fascinating to me, especially the first time it happened, is our backyard twice a year in the fall and the spring, our backyard becomes a rest stop for birds who are migrating. And we're never quite sure when it's going to happen, but when it does, our backyard is filled with thousands of birds. And the noise, it's amazing, but it's also deafening. I mean, I never thought, I'd be with so many birds that you just couldn't hear yourself think.
Oh, yeah. Wow. You're making me jealous. That sounds incredible. Migrating Birds, the book is a colors book because I think one of my favorite parts about spring when the seasons change is from late March through May, all of the birds are heading from their winter homes into their summer homes. So we get all of these visitors that I don't normally see, and they tend to be so beautiful and colorful. So all the Baltimore Orioles stop by. They change from their drab winter colors into their bright oranges, and we get to see scarlet tanagers and indigo buntings, all of these just bright, beautiful colored birds start popping up in the trees that are just getting their leaves. It's one of my favorite signs of spring.
Yeah. And I'm loving this board book. Those are those great books that kids literally consume. Both they consume the content and they usually chew on them a little bit and consume a little bit of the cardboard. But I think board books is such a great way to, just flick that switch, that ignite their interest and love of books. And what a great topic to, have that book out in your backyard with your kid on your lap and seeing the birds in the backyard and then seeing the bird on the pages of the book. That would be so cool.
Yeah. I love the idea of doing these as board books because, there's all of these big, beautiful bird guides for adults and younger readers. But birds are everywhere, and they are such a fascinating thing, especially when you're just learning about the world to see these bright, feathered, colorful things flying around in the sky. I loved the idea of doing a board book for the youngest readers that are just learning about their world so they could get introduced to all of these colorful visitors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think, too, just to talk to our kids about the fact that these birds are literally flying thousands and thousands of miles from their winter home to their summer home. It's mind-boggling for me. I don't know if kids can even wrap their heads around the idea.
Yeah, I know. It's a very big concept, but I think it's really cool because, kids go on trips to see their grandparents, kids go on vacations. So it's sort of that concept, but on this much bigger, much more seasonal scale that's very cool to teach about.
Yeah. And I'm glad we're both living in the city. You're living in Brooklyn. I'm living in Boston, and thankfully we're close to some big open green spaces, so we see birds. I think most people, when they think about the city and what birds they're going to see in the city, they think about pigeons.
Yes, that's very true. It's one of the other things that I love about birding, is just there's nature everywhere. And yes, sometimes that nature is pigeons, which are very cool in their own right. They're very beautiful. They've got lots of different colors, lots of different varieties. But yeah, birds are everywhere. They're just such an accessible piece of nature and such an accessible piece of science that I think they're a really great entryway into larger nature walks and learning about other animals.
Yeah. And migrating birds, it's a great way to introduce kids to colors, too.
Yes. Yeah, they are great because they are so, like I mentioned, the indigo buntings are such a vibrant blue and the scarlet tanagers are so red. It's a great way to be like, look, some of them also have really great names. One of my favorites is the yellow-rumped warbler, which what kid doesn't love something called a yellow-rumped warbler? And those just bright flashes of yellow are such a great way to teach kids their colors as well as the birds.
Yeah. I have a feeling my son would have just left off the warbler and just went with, oh, there's a yellow rump.
Yep, yellow rumps.
Now, the other book in the first of the two in the series, Backyard Birds, you're saying that was a counting book?
Yes. So that one, since migration happens mostly in the spring, but there's a good moment in the fall as well. But there's birds year round. And one of the best things in winter is going outside and looking at those bright blue jays and the American cardinals. And there's so many of them that it's a good opportunity to learn your numbers. So, I took some common backyard birds that you can go out and see in your own yard, mostly year round, but lots of times in the winter, and teach your kids to count.
Yeah. So much fun. I'm at a loss for words because I'm just thinking back and remembering teaching my kids to count. And, the different ways we did it. I know my son and we lived in the second floor when he was born, and we would go up and down the stairs and count the steps, and he would make himself sound like the Count on Sesame Street. 1, 2, 3,
That's great.
And I think that this is, I'm mentioning it because as we're teaching our kids the colors and the numbers, and we're teaching them how to count and identify colors and introducing them to nature, it's important for us to remember that we are, as parents, we are our kids' first and most important teachers. Mm-hmm. And it's really wonderful to have a tool like Birding for Babies that we can use to help us become better teachers and to excite kids about learning.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about numbers in particular, because that's what birders do. So not only are you teaching your kids how to count, but that as if you become a birder at any age, we all keep track of the number of birds we see. So if I go out on a walk and I see 10 robins, I make a note that I saw 10 robins that day, even to the point where the Audubon Society every year around Christmas time has what they call the Great Christmas Bird Count. And everyone organizes with their local groups and goes out in set areas and just sees how many birds they can count. So I love it because it's such a natural way to teach numbers, because it's really something that we all do, and it marries not only the concept of numbers, but kind of the beginning seeds of some citizen science in there.
Yeah. So you've been passionate about birds for a long time, it sounds like.
I have. My grandpa was actually a really big birder. And growing up on rainy days when we couldn't go outside, he would take me on imaginary animal walks through his condo building. We would walk down all the flights of stairs and pretend to see different animals. So he really laid the seeds.
That sounds adorable.
It was very cute. We would pack up like we were really going on a long trip. We would have a little backpack with water and snacks. And I would drag him down all of the flights of his condo building, and we would see all sorts of birds, but also some other animals too.
Wow. I'm hoping you just inspired somebody to take a similar walk in their condo. Well, because again, when we're living in the city and we're living in apartment buildings, sometimes it's easy to forget that nature is all around us, no matter where we are. And sometimes all it takes is a little imagination or a little mindfulness to go and find those moments and find nature in our lives.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. What else are you planning with the Birding for Baby series? How many books do you envision for the series?
We have just 2 for now, but I really love shorebirds. I would love to explore oyster catchers and all the different seagulls out there. There's so many. I think that would be really fun. I love birds of prey. They call it a spark bird, which is the first bird you kind of see that really gets you into birding. My spark bird was a big brown owl that I scared out of a tree while walking in the cemetery. So I would love to do some owls and hawks, all of those kinds of big birds. So we'll see what's next.
Yes, we have lots of hawks here in Reedville. They're just magnificent. And when they swoop down, occasionally they'll swoop down through our backyard, they're just amazing.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. They're one of my favorite birds to watch because it's just so fun to watch them circle and swoop. They're gorgeous.
Yeah. And I think, too, one of the neat things is as I travel and I go to different countries, different parts of the world, and see birds that we don't see here in the Northeast of the United States, it's fascinating to me. I remember the first time I was in Puerto Rico and we were along the beach and there were pelicans diving to get fish, and I was like amazed. And I think I was sitting there for a couple of hours, and my wife said, "Oh, I'll be back. I'm going to go shopping." And I'm like, "Yeah, fine. I'm great here."
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's great to use travel as an opportunity to see different kinds of birds that don't necessarily visit your house.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the bright, colorful bird. Do you have a list of favorite birds yourself?
Oh, I do. Yes. I mentioned I love the hawks. I really love woodpeckers because I think not only are they beautiful, most of them do have these really bright patches. Either red-headed woodpeckers are really gorgeous. They have these bright red heads. Red-bellied woodpeckers have a beautiful black and white striped back. But you can also hear them. It's really fun to walk around the woods and listen, and you hear their little tap, tap, taps on the trees, and then you can use that as kind of a clue that there's one around and try to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a lot of woodpeckers in our backyard, too, and they eat the insects and help keep the trees healthy.
Yeah, they're very cool.
Yeah. Now, in addition to writing, you are also the senior publishing manager at Penguin Random House. I'm really curious, what do you do?
It depends on the day. So I'm definitely more on the business side of things. I work with a lot of our big brands like Llama Llama and Mad Libs, kind of seeing what trends are out there. I help make stuffed animals happen, which is always very fun. And actually the trend watching piece is how these books came about.
Really?
Yeah. I was a birder, so I was especially attuned to this. But in 2020, when everyone was stuck at home, I noticed that there was a real increase in interest in birding and books about birding. And I thought that it would be a great way to introduce it to kids with these board books. So I mentioned it to our editors and they liked the idea, and it happened from there.
Wonderful. I bet you didn't think at that time when you get that idea and that you were seeing that trend, you didn't think that we'd be inside locked up birding for 2+ years.
I did not, but I'm glad that the interest in birding has continued. It's really great to see all the new birders out on the trails.
Yeah. So you're using this term birders and birding, and I kind of have an idea of you go out and you're intentionally looking for different birds and seeing what you can spot and writing it down. How would a family go about getting involved, becoming, do you have to become an official birder, or is there a way to become an official birder?
Nope. You can just go on a walk with your family and pay attention. It helps to be a little bit quiet so that you can hear. It's a really great tool to use all 5 of your most of your senses, because you're listening, you're looking to see where things are. But yeah, all you need is a pair of binoculars and a notebook. There's some apps that are really helpful. I like the Audubon app that helps you if you see a bird and you don't know quite what it is. You can enter all sorts of the information about it and it helps you come up with what it is. But it's such a wonderful, accessible hobby because really all you need is just your eyes and a piece of paper to keep track of what you see.
Awesome. Yeah, I have to get that Audubon app. That's Audubon, because I have an app that supposedly can help me identify what a bird by its song, but by the time I get the phone out and the app on, the bird's like flown away, and it's not.
Yeah, that's a great one too. But yeah, you have to really be quick on the draw.
Yeah. Wow. What advice, beyond just being quiet, would you have for parents to really help the family get into being out in nature together?
Yeah, I think quiet has helped. I think patience. I know patience can be really hard with younger children, but I think also just making it a game, because there's so many birds. I mean, I think one of the things I love about birding is there's even just going out and seeing a whole bunch of finches. Like, I find that very exciting, even though finches are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I might not necessarily be able to identify all the different finches because so many of them are just small and brown and look very similar. But it's a great opportunity to just kind of find joy just outside your backyard. So I think that's really great. I think also parents can help introduce their kids to these birds by doing some crafts at their own house to attract the birds. Mm-hmm. Growing up, my mom always had what we called the bird tree right outside our backyard, where she would hang her bird houses and her bird feeders. So we would get to see all these birds coming to our backyard. And I think that's a great opportunity, knowing what kinds of things attract certain birds. Like, if you want to see some Baltimore Orioles, you can put some grape jelly in a little dish outside your trees. And grape jelly is one of Baltimore Orioles' favorite foods. So you can hopefully see them if they're native to your area. Or even just taking an old pine cone and rolling it in some peanut butter and sunflower seeds. That'll attract some birds to your backyard, so you can get a glimpse of them that way as well.
Yeah, so much fun. Wow. What is the most unusual bird you've seen?
So I got to see a bird called a mandarin duck, which are very cool looking. They are not native to New York, but there was one a few years ago that just showed up in Central Park. We don't really know where it came from, but it was in Central Park just hanging out in the pond for, I think it was 2 or 3 months. And that was just very cool, because I don't know where I would have gotten to see one of those in the wild. So it was really neat.
Awesome. I think Bette Midler wrote a picture book about that.
She did indeed. She, I think, took a lot of pictures and got everyone was very excited about the mandarin duck for a few months in New York. And yeah, she turned it into a picture book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Chloe, where can people go to find out more about birding for babies and find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can go to your local bookstore and ask about birding for babies there, and you can always find more information at penguinrandomhouse.com or your favorite internet retailer.
Awesome. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Birding for Babies, a great series. The first 2 books are Migrating Birds and Backyard Birds. And we've been speaking with the author, Chloe Goodhart. Hey, Chloe, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kimberly McLeod. She'll be here to celebrate cut and color crafts for kids. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to help you celebrate your book and let the world know all about it. There's so many different ways we can help you celebrate your book. You can be a guest here on the podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell the world about your book, your inspiration, about you. Build your brand. It's a great way to build your brand. Like I said, it's fun, it's easy, and it doesn't cost a thing. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click in the authors, click here button that's at the top of the page, and scroll on down to be a guest. Oh, if you scroll on down a little bit further, you're going to find out how you can submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read, letting parents know that your book deserves a place in their family library. Oh, and if you scroll down even a little bit further, you can find out about our monthly promotion program and discover how we can celebrate your book with a commercials here on the podcast, with messages to our 99,000 social media followers. Display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards and exhibit your book at whatever live event we happen to be at in that particular month. Go to readingwithyourkids.com, click on that authors click here button, and scroll on down. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Chloe Goodhart. Please be sure to check out Birding for Babies. Also want to thank our sponsors, Pumpkin Princess, The Pocket Alpaca by Michael James. Also want to thank My Mom Has Two Jobs by My Mom Has Two Jobs by Michelle Travis. It's a great book. We love the book. We love Michelle. I love my team. Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I absolutely adore my beautiful wife, and I'm so thankful for all of her support. And you know what? We all love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.